Yeah, hi everyone. Welcome back to Valhalla Games podcast. Something extremely, very super exciting. We have a special guest on today. We have Dan.
Hi,
Say hi,
everybody.
Dan.
But I'm not the special person, am I?
But we, well, you are, but we have an even extra specialer guest. We have John Russell, Mister Warlord Games,
Hello.
America.
Hello. Thank you for having me on. This is really, I've been looking forward to this all day. And that's honest. I'm really excited to be here with you guys and get a chance to talk about Warlord and everything else that goes along with it.
Fantastic. And yeah, we always enjoy hearing your dulcet tones on various other podcasts and bits and pieces as well. Always lots of interesting facets of what's going on in Warlord games, both in games that we love and play, and also in games that we would love to play, but haven't managed to get there yet because there's a lot going on. Now, that's a perfect segue to what time is it in the US where you're living right now?
9:24 p.m.
9:24 p.m. and you're starting the podcast. But I'm guessing you probably had a pretty quiet weekend so far.
Yeah, it was pretty. It started about Wednesday afternoon when we drove down to Round Rock, Texas. And then Thursday afternoon we set up for MillenniumCon. Lorenzo Paula, I gave him. I asked him if he had any Warlord shirts for this weekend. He said, "Well, I got one," and I had sneakily went over to my shirt lady Tanya over at Fast Itch, and I had her make up 3 shirts that say "Customer Service Magician," Lorenzo Pala. So, because he's the heart and soul of our customer service department, he's the reason why we keep winning that award. So he came with me, and we went down to Round Rock, Texas, and we set up for MillenniumCon on Thursday. And my crew of Raiders, Jay and Scott and Casey and Ray's son Josh, and then Phil and Tina from Sherwood Wargame showed up, and then Patty and John from Dad's Army showed up, and then Mario and his crew. So it was interesting to see as we went through the weekend. And I made sure that I introduced Lorenzo to a lot of the people that I do and how I interact with the people. So he got to see, he's the first guy from headquarters. He's the third guy to come visit, fourth guy to come visit. But one guy didn't work a convention, but the other 2 did. But they worked the local Twisted Lords here in Oklahoma City. Yep. So they didn't have to travel. We had all the room we wanted. We could go back to the shed and get stuff. But in this one, we had to pack up a big van. We got a 16-foot panel van, and we drove for 6 hours. And then set up and then tore it down and all this. So he got to see how we do it over here in America. And we stayed at Jay's house instead of a hotel. So he got to see how all of my Raiders interact when we do these things around the States. And he said it's a different quality, which of course I know it is, a different quality of, and he used the word and it fits, but the intimacy of American conventions. Everybody knows everybody. Everybody will sit and chat for a little bit, pop beers or whatever we want, and we'll play games. And it's kind of your extended family, is a good word to say. Ray, I have a Raider up north, Troy, that said people come for our games, but they stay for the community. And the bolt action community is huge down there, and it's worldwide. And this is how I met you guys through the bolt action, and you guys, through blood, sweat, and tears, produced a phenomenal first step Perimeter bridge. I mean, that book has now set the standard. You guys are going to have everybody around the world now have to come up to that standard because you guys are that book is phenomenal. Everybody I showed it to were like, holy cow. I'm like, yeah, wait, but wait, there's more, so they kept coming and it just, I mean, you guys sent me 14 books and I got 3 left. So there you go. There's the power of the book. So if the listeners haven't got that book, they better damn well get that book before it disappears, because that's something you need to have on your shelf, not on your cover table, on your shelf, and put it in your book bag and read it and reread it, because when me and Steve wrote Korea, we went through a lot of iterations. It took us about a year to write, and I'm still writing it. My bookshelf has gone from 1 stack of books to 3 stacks of books. And you guys obviously have the same thing for when you did Primasol, because the love it comes through every page, and the detail and the research. And And I'm not saying that Warlord doesn't do that for theirs, but I mean, it just, you look at Kill a King, you look at the D-Day trilogy, you look at the Dark and Bloody Ground. I mean, the stuff that we put out, you can tell that the authors really put a lot into it. And you guys really put it in the Peninsula. So it was an honor and a privilege to show that to the people over here, and I really enjoyed it. And then,
fantastic. Well, I want to get onto that a little bit later. Actually, and I want to come back to some of the stuff about, because what you've said there is enough for 3 podcasts. I feel already done. I want to come back to a lot of that. I particularly want to come back to stuff about conventions in the US, and I want to come back to your raiders, and that's a concept that we don't have over here in Australia and New Zealand, and I'm not sure that they have in the UK either. But first of all, before we go down that path, we have a set of questions for you, a bit of tradition. First time being recorded on Valhalla Games podcast. We try to give you a bit of a look up and down, inside and out, and see what makes you tick.
That's right.
So people can assess what you say on the basis of that information. So should we rip into that?
Sure, go ahead. Let's let it rip. Go ahead, Dan.
All right. So Dan, do you want to? You made a list of the Spanish Inquisition. Do you want to start on some of that, and we'll see how we go? And by the way, John, some of this you need to tell the truth on some of this too. What is he holding up here? Oh, the Spanish Inquisition. Good. So for those listening, we have an audio only podcast, which is so we can podcast in our underwear or our jammies, as the case may be.
My Supermans are on, so it's okay. It's all right.
Good stuff. But we actually have a video link up as well, so that we can see each other's smiling faces. And John's already pulled something off the huge shelf of blisters behind him, which was the Spanish Inquisition. And while we were going on, I should have put this up to him.
Thank you very much.
which is the Korea book. Yeah. And I have to admit that only arrived 10 minutes ago on my desk.
Fantastic.
And I believe you may have had something to do with that book. But anyway, let's go back. Let's go back a couple of steps and find out about John the Wargamer.
Yeah, I'm really interested because our first question really links into that US community that you were talking about there, John, and I'm really intrigued by it. And I know when I listen to podcasts like Henry Hyde, when I listen to the official Warlord Games podcast that Brad does, and Cast Dice. So I love listening to the US guys, the Snafu team as well. I love listening about the community, and I find it really intriguing. So tying into that, when and how did you get into wargaming, and what was your entry point into it?
Over 40 years ago, I started my downward spiral into the rabbit hole that is gaming, and it was, I would buy Aerofix boxes, those 72nd scale Aerofix boxes, and me and my buddy would paint them up, and then you'd throw rocks at them, or throw things, and then my first official board. And then there was, Risk, and we would play a Stratego, and then my first Avalon Hill game, I think it was in '75 maybe, and that was Luftwaffe. Oh. And funny enough, I bought it here. I was living in Montana. I'm from Montana, where men are men and women are scarce and the sheep aren't bad. But, I remember buying it at a game store here in Oklahoma City when I was visiting my aunt, and I opened up that Luftwaffe box and played it behind one of her rocking chairs and tried to figure it out. Yep. And then it was a slippery slope to squad leader, advanced squad leader, Panzer Blitz, Panzer leader, and then there was what was it? The Yaquinto games of Panzer and 88, and then me and a good friend of mine, Scott Goldstein, did a road trip to Gen Con, and that's when I got into 1/300 scale GHQ stuff. When I was in high school, I did a lot of role playing, started doing role playing, and then when I graduated high school, I had my own store for a while in the basement of the house. We went and rezoned the zoning so I could have a store there, and my dad helped me out and did that. And then he got transferred. Yeah, so I had my own store for a while, and then we did a lot of TSR stuff. Then a lot of TSR and Chaosium, and 7 o'clock in the morning on Saturdays we'd have Dawn Patrol. So we get out the cards.
So what? Sorry, TSR.
Yeah.
So what phase of TSR was this? What sort of year?
White box.
Oh, white box.
Yeah, the white box. The white box. Then the little dragon box, and then there was Top Secret and Boot Hill, and Dungeon. Yeah, and then Gamma.
Gamma World.
What was that? Gamma World, and just all those. And then of course, then you got RuneQuest was around that time, and then I really enjoyed Top Secret. I really liked that one a lot. And then there was every once in a while you'd play Napoleonics if you had a whole day to play like 6 moves, and we weren't going to do miniatures when I was playing role playing, but then because I lived in Havre, Montana, and the closest game store was in Great Falls, Montana, which was 110 miles away.
Wow, right.
But then we started, me and the guy started making these miniature runs, and we'd drive 110 miles, go to the hobby store, buy our miniatures, hit the only McDonald's, that we knew of, and then come home, about 2 hour drive, 2.5 hour drive. Montana is kind of like Australia. You don't measure it in miles, you measure it in hours, right? How far you have to drive. So it's so
that's interesting. That's a concept that you don't so much get in New Zealand, because Dan and I are both from New Zealand.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, the vast distances when you look on the map, and I've never been to the US,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm very I don't know if you know in the US, but so much of the stuff that we watch, so much of the media is this happened in New York City and California, and these places are mythology to us. To say you come from Oklahoma City or Kansas or whatever, we go to the thing that we associate most with. So Kansas, the only thing I really know about Kansas is you're not in Kansas anymore, Toto. And it's really, really interesting because the country's so dominant in our media that we have these weird kind of perceptions of all the places.
Well,
so that's some dedicated gaming. That is.
Well, Rex, what's really cool that you say Kansas is because if you look at the map of the states, Kansas is the same size as the United Kingdom in land area. Okay, so that'll give you. So I use that reference a lot with my guys, the headquarters guys. You do realize that I now cover all of that in Canada and Mexico, so it takes me a while to get around, which is the reason why we got a lot of raiders, and we'll get into that later. But and then I moved into, after role playing, I was in Korea, and I got exposed really hard to BattleTech and did a lot of BattleTech. We'd game every weekend, and then I saw this game called Rogue Trader.
Yep.
And I was like, oh, that's really cool, but that's going to be really expensive. So maybe if they do it in small scale like Epic, which they did, I got hooked real hard on Epic. And then when in 1994, I was in the service, and I was down in Texas, and Games Workshop started looking for these things called Outriders.
Yep.
And what an Outrider was you'd go to stores and you'd show the new product. 5-6 weeks before it released, they'd send you the product, you paint it up. So the day of release, you'd walk into the store and you'd do the demos. So I became an Outrider. I did that for like 13 years, and in the middle of that 13 years, I also worked for Forge World for 10 years. And what we did with Forge World was, instead of sending over a crew from England, they'd send over one guy, big Steve Morse, and he was our handler, and they would fly about 7 or 8 of us to 4 or 5 events a year, and they would take care of, pay us, pay our food, airfare. We'd get discounts on books and the toys, and then we would go do cons, the games days and open days and grand tournaments, and we would set up. We could set up and tear down the booth in about 45 minutes. We got that good, and everybody had a specialty. Ogre was a specialty in Space Wolves, and my specialty was Tau. After a while, and it was just I know, and we did that for a long time, and then we were made redundant. But while I was doing that, right after I did that for a while, and then I got transferred to Germany, And while I was in Germany, I would go over and do Games Day UK.
Yep.
In 2001, I was the master of ceremonies. I was a big guy dressed up like a inquisitor. Tammy Haynes had put around the rim of my cloak, "Your mama's so fat" in Latin, so it was kind of a nice inside joke. And I introduced Rick Priestley, and he came on the big screen behind me, and he talked about that fantastic game, Lord of the Rings, that they did.
Yep.
And while I was over there, I was running around with this guy named Chris Bone. He was watching this house for this guy. And we had to go stop by the house to get something. And I walk in there, I'm like, oh my God, this house is just amazing. There's toys all over the wall. There's a big game room. There's inert weapons all over. Whose house is this? And he goes, oh, this is John Stollard's house. He's our CEO in America. I'm like, oh, that's kind of cool. Well, you skip forward to 2003, 2004, when I come back to the States, and I'm still working for Warlord for Games Workshop before they made me redundant in 2008. And I'm at the Games Day Baltimore, and there's John Stollard.
Right.
So I walk up to him, and he doesn't know me out of Adam. But I go, hello, Mr. Stollard. My name is John Russell, and you don't know me, but I've been to your house. And he's like, excuse me? So from then on, we've been friends. So, and we would exchange books, send them back and forth. And then when he and Paul Sawyer were made redundant from Games Workshop, they were sitting around 16, this is our 16th year, but 15 years ago, they were sitting around John's table trying to figure out what they do with their redundancy money, and they're like, those 3 vultures in Jungle Book. I don't know. What do you want to do? I don't know. No, stop it. And they figured out they want to do Romans, so they decided to put their money into buying and making Romans, and they cast them and everything. And the first store to sell the first box, here's a trivia question, is Brooker's Hobbies in California, and
oh wow,
And John had known me for about 10 years now, and they started doing this Warlord game stuff. And they said, well, John, you do, I'd attended conventions around the States, and I was just showing Lorenzo I got a lanyards that are about a pile of lanyards that are about like that, and everybody does when they go to these cons. And John started saying, hey, could you do some things for us? And we're thinking about this game Bolt Action. Can you maybe help us and do so? We did a lot of play tests. We wrote some rules for them. The cavalry rules were mine, so if you don't like them, screw you. I love them. But and then they got nerfed by Alessio. But they're still. I love my cav. And the different dice in the multiple player for the different colors. So your dice color comes out. You have to move instead of just saying Axis and Allies, because then it forces those players to have to make the move.
Yep.
That was some of our guys, and. So I would help them on the fringe, going to cons and kind of do things. And then just about the time I was thinking about stopping to do cons, Stollard and Chris Bostock, the CFO, and I call him the reality guy. He's the guy that keeps John on the straight and narrow. He doesn't play, but he's a good resource of information and keeps us sane. Said, hey, look, we know you work. I'd gotten out of the military then. I'd retired, and then I got rehired. Same job, but as a civilian. I've done that for almost 8-9 years.
Yep.
And they said, look, we can't pay you the same price as what you're getting from the government, but how about we give you this salary and 3 or 4 trips to England a year? And I said, well, I have to ask my wife. And of course, I go talk to my wife, and she looks at me like I grew a third eye, like that bad guy in Slain. And she goes, what, you're silly? You're stupid. Come on, this is your dream job. You've been waiting this for 40 years. Yes, go do it. So I left the military for good in the civil service after 32 years. And now this is my this will be my 5th year. So in January, I'll start the 6th year of working for Warlord. And in those 5 years, I've traveled 214,000 miles.
Wow.
So yeah, it's I do about 30 to 40 events a year, and the headquarters says they love me, but I'm getting a little too old, so they want me to start leaning on my Raiders some more. So, and since then, I've got my name in the Bolt Action book and the American Army book, and I've got a chance to. It's exciting and crazy, the people that I know now around the world from this gaming. I got friends in Germany, friends in New Zealand. I got, I met Victoria. She's the one that did those.
Yep.
In fact, she gave me those sets at Adepticon.
Oh, great.
I've got places I can go, like when I go to Millennium, I stay with my Raiders. I've got, people in all over Europe. I've been to, when I was stationed in Saudi Arabia, I went outside my villa and I looked down on the sand, and there's a round base from Games Workshop. So I'm like, someone's been here playing.
Yeah.
So it's just, it's amazing that this community is what it is, and I've had a chance to do what I've done. If I look back, when I was that 12-year-old kid opening this first box of Luftwaffe, thinking that you jump forward 40 plus years and you're still doing it.
Yeah.
And you're getting paid to do it. It's kind of crazy. So, long answer, short question.
That's
fantastic.
Yeah, that's really amazing. And hey, one service person to another. Well done on. Firstly, thanks for your service. I know it's been Veterans Day there. Just the
thanks for your support.
Thank you, and well done for such a successful transition, because it can be hard carrying over your key transferable skills from a lot of people. A lot of people don't recognise what they have leaving the service and going into somewhere else. So well done for you.
Oh, yeah.
You're outstanding. Yes. So you spent that's a lot of time, and you've done a lot of things there. So I'm interested in what were your favourite game systems or rule sets, or even maybe a period? Can you narrow down what's been your favourite thing?
Sure. I dabble in everything, and I was really hard into role playing for a while, but then that just kind of burnt out. Cyberpunk was the big thing. I liked that a lot, and I liked Top Secret and RuneQuest. And then I left role playing, and then World War II has been a draw for me. World War I airplanes, maybe for a while, but it's always been World War II.
Yeah.
Mostly Eastern Front was my big thing, and still is. It's my passion, my love. Someday I'll go to Russia and tour some battlefields. Maybe we'll see someday.
Interesting. Yeah.
But I really like skirmish level games. I had, I loved Panzer Blitz and Panzer Leader, and then I found this game called Jagdpanzer, which was written by Kevin Kabye, who I met at Little Wars, and now is a good friend of mine, and he always gives me an update and signed a copy for me and everything, so that's kind of cool. So, I met a hero.
Great.
And then, but in 28 mil, I think is my love. I mean, our epic stuff is beautiful. And I'll play it. I'll push anybody's lead around. Don't get me wrong, but it's World War II, and the grand action is great. But I like that squad on squad hero kind of stuff.
Yep.
I went down a deep rabbit hole, and I've got a Operation Chariot 6x4 board now.
Ooh. Yep.
And it's not the first two, it's the third patch. The guys that ran into the dock and they jumped off of that.
Yep.
Each commando's got his name on the back, and they're carrying their weapons. I contacted an author and got the weapons list. So they're about 95. I mean, I really went crazy on this Operation Chariot. But World War II is my passion, and now I had this thing, this idea in the back of my head for Korea, and then I bothered the bosses for 3 years, and they finally said, okay, fine. So then my good friend and I, Steve Smith, and I sat down for a year and wrote that, and that has become. We did it for a year and we had to stop. And the Korea supplement that's sitting on front of your desk there, Rex, is the largest book that Warlord's ever done. It's 240 pages. And the other thing that's really cool about that book is if you flip to the last page, on the very back, you open up that back cover.
I'm opening it. That's the only thing. As I said, it arrived 10 minutes before we were due to podcast. And I opened up that back page and someone's name's in there.
Yeah. Well, mine. But I mean, now go to the very last page. Go to the very, very last page. It's the only book that does that. What does it say?
To those who have served, for those who have lost their lives for this country.
That's the only book that has a dedication to the people who fought the book. And it was going to be in Hangul, but Osprey couldn't figure out the typeset, so we had to do the translation. But that was a big thing for me and Steve, and you'll understand too, Rex. There's something that's near and dear to veterans about. I've met some guys that can't play bolt action because they lost a son or a father or an uncle. I get that, but it was important for me and Steve to put that in there. So now Korea has become my passion, and it still is. But
Great.
World War II has always been my go-to. Whatever scale it is, I don't care.
That's great.
Yeah, it's interesting what you say there. And I think having a brother Dan that's served in active service and various places in the world, it really does bring it home a little bit more. Dan doesn't talk much about where he's been and bits and pieces. Mostly we just chat about wargaming and all kinds of other stuff. But I know that that he's worked hard to be the sheepdog, as it were. And
I know exactly when you say sheepdog, I know exactly what you're referring to.
Yep.
Thank you.
So, that brings it home to me as well, because I've got, Dan, and also our grandfather served in Second World War as well, and it does make it a lot more personal than just pushing plastic around the page. Doesn't mean we can't play a good game of Saving Private Ryan or whatever other crazy Hollywood bolt action stuff we've got going on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's. I'm sure it's there is no accidents, and there's no accident that veterans sitting here talking to each other both have dedications in their book to the people that were affected by the battles, either participants or the civilians that suffered throughout the battle, and continue to suffer afterwards in the books that we've written. So yeah, well done. Very passionate affair, isn't it? Writing it when you get into it.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Well, I'm dying to see your Saint Nazaire board now. If you better send us so those of you who might be listening to this podcast, Operation Chariot, so raid on Saint Nazaire. So yeah, I'm sure John might send us a sneaky photo, and we might be able to place it up somewhere, maybe in the notes for the podcast. You think, John?
Oh yeah, sure. There's a whole album on my Facebook page, so it's easy. I can just grab those from there and I'll send them over to you. And I'm never that board, like the Korea board that me and Lorenzo finished for MillenniumCon, it's an ongoing thing. I keep adding it because it's a dockyard.
Yeah.
So when it first came out, it was pretty bare, but over the years I've added a crane, another boat, because there was a boat in the dock when the Campbelltown rammed it. So there's two boats on this table.
Wow.
One's just a bow, but then more buildings, more dunnage, more cargo. And I'm always adding to it. Like we took the Sarissa terrain tile system and the Japanese village, and we modified it to a Korean type, and we finished it up just in time. Well, the rice paddies were a little wonky, but we finished it up just in time. And it's a 3-foot by 3-foot board, a perfect demo board for Korea. So I've got that, and now I've got the next project is to do. I'm a guy that does big scales. I love with a passion. Now I do big red skies and big alley instead of blood skies and big alley. I have 1/72 scale aircraft, and I started off with the 4 in the box that we have. The Aerofix presents Blood Red Skies. I call it Big Red Skies.
Yep.
And those 4 things led to, I think I have over 70 kits now.
Oh, wow.
In processor form. Some of them have the intentional thumbprint on the canopy, because when we were kids building those things, you could never. And then I'm working on Big Action, and it's right here.
Oh,
here we go.
Okay. This is Big Action. I mean, wouldn't you be mesmerized and captivated if you walked by a table, and on that table there's a 3-foot by 3-foot board, and somebody's showing you how to play bolt action with this size of figure?
Oh, good. Is that,
for those of you listening at home in audio only, is that 75 millimeter?
54 millimeter. 54 millimeter.
54.
Yeah.
Wow.
Guy sent me 200 of these and 9 AFEs. So there's a Stug lurking over there. There's a Tiger 1 up there.
Oh, wow.
There's a Martyr 3, a Stuart tank, a 251, 222, and then hiding in the corner is a Panther and a Sherman. So I had one of my Raiders build me a 3x3 54 millimeter, almost 1/35 scale demo area, and there's a building with you can see the toilet and all that kind of stuff in there, and there's a smashed garden, and then I got these guys print up, and then some of my Raiders, because I needed a sustained fire support weapons, they've 3D printed sustained fire MG42 and an
Good print.
MG34. Oh yeah. So then I can have, when I do demos, I like the quick and fast, 35 minutes or less, to just get the taste,
Yep.
put your toe in.
Sure.
Yep.
And so I have 2 squads, a lieutenant, and then a support weapon. So that'll be my next project is big action. So
that is the type of fan mail you really want. Never mind these emptying of a big sack and like envelopes come out. Let's have like a smaller sack, but like AFVs and like a 54mm soldiers come out. That's great.
He's just bringing out all the toys now, and he's making my mouth water. I hope you're gonna paint those suitably for 54mm. So I want to see individual teeth painted, maybe a mole or a sunspot on someone's face.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yep.
Yeah. It should be fun. I'm really looking forward to it.
You're talking about the demo games and stuff like that, and there's no mystery behind why businesses have suffered explosive growth like Games Workshop and Warlord Games simply by having people on the ground, boots on the ground. You've incorporated the Raiders aspects. There was the Outriders aspect to Games Workshop. Yeah, explosive growth in those regions that those teams have put to good use. And you've obviously been a part of that experience.
Yeah, and I'll say this to the day you put dirt on my face. There's nothing better than seeing a well laid out terrain board with some well painted miniatures. It's going to grab your eye, and people are going to say, "What the hell is that? Can I play it?" And you give them that taste. Warlord Games has I think hit the nail on the head with, we're not historically accurate, but we're historically influenced. And you can play a game in 2 to 4 hours. We don't want anything greater than that, because then 4 hours is a long time to play a game. Gone are the days of playing Napoleonics for 6 hours and doing 4 turns and maybe figuring out who won. Warlord Games is designed to be played quick and fast. Somewhere in the first or second or maybe even the third paragraph of any rule book we write, somewhere in some form or fashion, there alludes to, thanks for buying our game. Go ahead and have fun, do whatever the hell you want. So modify it, do what you want, because it's your game. You bought it. Sure. And that's what I really like. And the demo, if it's more than 30 minutes, it's going to be hard to catch. I mean, our best game to really hook people, I feel, is Blood Red Skies. It's so easy to show people how to play, and it's that old Othello term, easy to learn, lifetime to master thing. You can show somebody, and you can talk them through in 5 minutes. I was at a convention called NashCon, and 11 guys walked up to my booth and said, "We want to learn how to play Blood Red Skies."
Right.
Ooh,
11.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah, 11 guys walked up and said, "We got 11 guys. We want to learn how to play." I'm like, "Wow, okay." So I cracked open 2 boxes because I gave everybody 2 aircraft, so we've got 22 aircraft on the table. 6, it was a little bigger 6x4 because there's 11 guys and 22 airplanes. And from "Hello, my name is John Russell. This is how we play," to knock it off, we're done. Hour and 45 minutes. 22 aircraft in an hour and 45 minutes. Done. Wow. Now, my good friend Doug Glover from Lead Pursuit Podcast, a podcast people should listen to if you love Blood Red Skies and other things, because Doug is one of those guys that you guys got to talk to. He grew up in a game store. His mom and dad owned a game store.
Oh, wow.
So he knows oh my God, the stories he tells. And then he's also a retired Marine F-18 backseater.
Oh, wow. Right.
So he knows a little bit. So he knows a little bit.
He knows a little bit about flying, and he knows a ton of people. And he puts on the Lead Pursuit podcast is mostly Blood Red Skies, but it also does things like from DVG games. He gets authors on there. He gets game designers on there, and they're always informative, about an hour long, hit you in the face. They came up to my booth in 2016 at Adepticon. They're hardcore 30K players.
Yep.
40K players. And they came up and they said, "What is this thing you call Blood Red Skies?" And I showed it to them, and they still curse my name to this day, because now they are all avid, hardcore Blood Red Skies, and they stood up this podcast. And so in 3 years, they've done 98 or 99 sessions. I mean, it's just prolific.
Yeah.
But he has they have taken the Blood Red Skies and just went with it, and that's what's great about these games is it's easy to play. And he beat my record last year at Twisted Lords here in Oklahoma City, but he had 14 people come up,
Oh,
and they came and they attacked my Hornet. I have a Hornet and a Bismarck in 1/200 scale that we bring out for the big games, for the big shows.
yep.
And
Seeing the pictures, they are impressive.
yeah,
Wow.
yeah, it's so much fun. And then again, that's that table grabber.
Yeah.
You drop down a 4-foot long aircraft carrier. People are like, "What the hell?"
It's like the USS Flag of the GI Joe toy. It's like that, but for anyone who pretends that their toys are more mature.
Yeah, exactly. So it's 30 minutes or less. So when I do bolt action tournament tests or demos, it's 2 squads, a support weapon, everybody's regular. It's done in 35-45 minutes. It's easy.
Oh, I love your passion, and I can hear that you're attracting like-minded individuals to you, and that's what passionate people do, and that really sounds why you guys are getting such a huge following and why your games are taking off. I take my hat off to you. I've got a question for you.
Thank you.
Well, you deserve it. I've got a question for you then, because you're so passionate. So I want you to imagine that, God forbid, maybe your plane ran out of fuel or something like that, and you're on a desert island now. Okay, and you've got a backpack, and in it is your most prized future army that you want to finish off. Yeah, army or fleet or wing or whatever the case may be, depending on which where you're going to go. So what force would it be? You've got all the paints and all the miniatures. What would it be? What would the theme be? What would it be?
Oh, that's a damn good question. Well, it would be nice to finish that big action, but there's a couple pieces left from my early Polish. But if I'm going to be stuck on that island for a while, you want something new, I guess. So, my South Koreans that I've just started on. Warlord makes North Koreans, Chinese, and then the British forces, and we're going to try to finish up the rest of those this coming year with the support box and then some guys with the Croyless rifles, and then winter's coming. But we tried to figure out how to do South Koreans, and what we did and what we came up with is Nick Parsons. There's 2, if you go to the Facebook page, there's 2 Korea Facebook pages. There's a Korea, all caps, that's the one I run. Right. And then capital K, little letters, is the one that Nick Parsons runs in the UK and the WoW, rest of the world. And he came up with this idea that we could do South Koreans by when any UN force got into the Korean AOR, they were either given British or American kit just for the logistics to keep it the same.
Yeah,
sure.
So what we're going to do, at least we did for the South Koreans as a test, is we talked to the Spinners and Pete Healy, the great guy that's there, and the other Pete, Pete Squared, and they spun up a bunch of Nisei heads for us. So I picked up 50 Nisei heads, and now I put those on top of American guys, and now I got my South Koreans. So we'll do that in the future, I hope, for Greeks and Turks and all Ethiopians and all the all the UN forces that are in that. So if I was on an island, long answer, short question, I'll be working on my South Koreans.
That shows a passion. So that, I guess, is a great segue into one of the other questions that we have here. How did you come about the idea of becoming an author? Is Korea your first book that you've sort of written? The
Yes.
Bolt Korea supplement, and how did you sort of come to that? What made you jump off that deep end and get into that?
I was stationed there for a year, and my dad served in the Korean Wars in the Navy towards the very end, 52, 53, 53, 54, I should say. And it was one of those things that it put bolt action to the next level. Yep. And nobody has done a Korean book like this. And when you first look at Korea, you don't think there's a lot out there. And it's like a really deep pothole. Oh, I can drive through that, And then you get in it. And it just starts, oh, this is cool and this is cool. And then because my raiders know that I like Korea, when they go into a bookstore or used bookstore or an antique store. Oh, John might like this. So I've got my Raiders picked up a photo album from some guy that was going to Korea. So all these black and white
Oh, wow.
photos of his. Yeah, I know. And I'm like, well, yeah, buy it. And then I'll get like the second Infantry Division's 51 to 52 book. I'm like, well, yeah, but now I got to find the 50 to 51 and the 52 to 53 book. It was something that I liked, and it was something that I thought was not covered, and I thought that the bolt action system would work. And I started having some ideas how I wanted to write it, how I wanted to do it, how I wanted to set it up. And then I started talking with Steve Smith about it. And he had some ideas, and we started, spitballing back and forth, like I'm sure you guys did when you wrote Primasol. And, hey, how about this? How about this? And then it was a matter of just convincing headquarters. And I kept, every time I was over, every time I had a chance, hey, it'd be cool to be Korea. Shut up, John. Hey, Korea because shut up, John. And it's just, I was a broken record. So finally, Paul Sawyer caved in and said, okay, fine, write it. You got a year. So then me and Steve went nuts. And Steve really took it to heart, and he really went down a rabbit hole like I've never, almost to the detriment of his family and health. He went so far into that, and he ended up writing about 60 to 70% of it, and I wrote about 30 to 40% of it. He did a lot of he did the Army lists, and he did a lot of the middle history. I did the run-up history, and I did all the little box outs, and I did the scenarios. 15 of the 17, we had a guest guy, Leo Barron, who wrote a book about Chip Young Knee, do 2 scenarios for us. I did the coordination, so it was, and then we just went into writing and rewriting and doing these proofs and going back and forth, and then towards the end we bounced it off Alessio Cavatore, and he said, I wish I would have had more time with you guys because this is great, but the history is great. And if you start reading that front part of that book, Rex, and there's some things in there that people don't know about, or people maybe have forgotten, and there's certain things we wanted to make sure people realized. And we used the bibliography is like a page and a half, I think. There's so many, and now we're even finding more books. We just recently found a book that one of my Raiders, Will, found at a bookstore that was a former classified document of logistics for the United States Army, and it still has the nomenclature and the provenance in the front. This will be declassified and stamped and scratched, and it's really helping us do some of the logistics stuff. It was really easy to do the TONE for the Americans and the South Koreans and the British, but it was damn near impossible for the Chinese. We just could not crack that code. And we were in our the 11th hour trying to get stuff done, and we just couldn't figure it out. And then I went to it was either Historicon or Little Wars, and we ran into I just lost his name, an elderly gentleman that always has these books on his and in that book was 2 after action report books. One was by SLA Marshall Slam, and another one about tactics, and that cracked the code and broke the dam for us, and we were able to finally get an idea how to do the Chinese Army and the North Korean Army. Correct. And then then we got that done. So it was just it's that nagging thing in the back of your head that you want to talk more. You want to. Our hobby has very passionate people. And sometimes it's almost too passionate, and you're at a convention and they want to talk your ears off until your eyes bleed. But it's everybody has a certain itch they want to scratch when they play these games, and when they find it, it's nuts. And we got really lucky that we hit it just right, and we were nominated for an Origins Award in 2019. And I was really excited about that, and I was going to go. I didn't know how the voting process works. We were going up against the D-Day book, so either way, Warlord was going to win. And then COVID hit, so I had all this demo stuff to show people, and then nothing happened. And I guess it was by mystery ballot or something, so we didn't end up winning. But to be nominated for the Origins Award or Best New Historical Period, thank you. Yeah, it was like, hey. Yes.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. And I think I'm pretty typical of a lot of people out there that haven't had any direct involvement with it. I know very little about Korea. I mean, most of my knowledge comes from MASH.
Yeah, and that's why there is a
and that's a
MASH
comedy.
Yeah, and
So-
there is a MASH unit that we have, and there's a scenario or two that you can use that. I think the hardest thing for people to play Korea is that somebody has to have a communist army. That's it. But you have to buy an army. But the Chinese are really easy to paint up. I mean, I did 5 squads in a week and a half because they don't have a lot of paraphernalia on them. Or the North Korean models are absolutely gorgeous.
Beautiful.
And they paint up great. But I think, Rex, that's the hardest part of playing Korea is somebody's got to be communist. But all your British forces that you have work, your American forces you have work. The pockets are a little different. And oh my God, if you're going to be that kind of a bean counter, then okay, sorry.
I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to getting into the history of it. Normally, when I read one of these books, I read the entire book through history first, and then I come back and start looking at it in terms of units, and then I come back and I start looking at it in terms of scenarios. And I guess probably that talks about me as a wargamer. I'm not Mr. Super Competitive, but I'm Mr. Oh my gosh, I'm right into it. But something really interesting happened. We just Dan and I just finished a podcast actually, but we just our podcast about going to Moab, Mother of All Battles, which is New South Wales,
huge.
Sydney. It's our biggest one in New South Wales. Certainly not the biggest in Australia, but
I've heard about that one, and I'd really like to get out there sometime because it sounds like it's a phenomenal event.
Yeah, and it was really well organised. The guys did a fantastic job, and they also had a great prize pool. Was supported directly by Warlord Games, so thank you for that.
You're welcome.
But one of the interesting, and the reason that I bring it up is they actually allowed bolt action generic selectors, but they also allowed Korea. Now, I don't think there was a single Korea army in there, was there, Dan?
There wasn't, but I think the chat was that it really made people look, and I think that they also realised they had a lot to work to do in regards, because there's a lot of people who really value that historical element, and especially we spoke to many of them at Moab. And I really think that once that gate was open to them, they were like, wow. But then they were like, you know what? Let's do this right. Let's have a bit of a read, make sure we get this right, and make sure we're doing things justice. And I want my army, when I do Korea, to really represent what's on the ground and, be as personalised and look as amazing as my bolt action armies. So I really think the gates have opened there, and I'd like to think another event, if not Moab,
that'd be fantastic.
We'll go after that, because I think that'll be a different story next year.
So the thing that excites me is not the fact that it wasn't widely taken up, but the fact that we've dipped our toes in now, and as a consequence of that, I've gone and bought the book. I wonder who else has as well, and all of a sudden we're going to be on this upward spiral, and I'm really, really looking forward to that. And I think you're right, John. COVID hit right at the wrong time in the terms of the curve of the interest of the book. People were sort of locking down and not doing a lot right when they should have been picking it up and running with it. So,
well, I'm happy to announce that I think in the first January, February of next year, there's a Korean tournament in England. They're going to set it up and have a Korea bolt action tournament. So it's going to be, I'm excited to see how that goes. And I'm not apologizing for the deep hole you're about to fall into, because I think you're going to enjoy it. And I also had to.
I'm really looking forward.
Yeah, well, I also was kind of, what's the word I'm trying to find? I was honored and that the latest bolt action D-Day book, I think it was, the third one, pulled out seasoned veteran, seasoned sergeant, seasoned NCO that me and Steve came up with in Korea. So it was like, oh, look, somebody liked it. So, hey, there you go. I guess it's a good idea. He's designed after the sergeant, I think it's Sergeant Plumley, and We Were Soldiers. The old crusty old grizzled command sergeant major who has done everything. And what he does for 50 points, if he's within 6 inches of your lieutenant, he makes that lieutenant. If it's a second lieutenant, it makes him a first lieutenant. If it's a first lieutenant, it makes him a captain. If it's a captain, it makes him a major. Now, major's already crusty, but he'll bump up your officer 1, and if he is killed, the sergeant major becomes the officer, so you don't lose your command. So it's kind of, for 50 points,
Great.
it's kind of cool, So
Yeah,
yeah,
I
and
like
somebody
that.
else used it.
I like rules like that work within thread, sort of within the rules that we already have, and sort of portray them in a slightly different light. It really changes the way that you might potentially set up to play your entire
Well,
game. A couple little rules like
I
that.
think the
So
biggest hurdle we had after we got the green light to do it was the term that comes up is you're asking the guy to kill your baby, his baby. And what we had done is bolt action uses grenades in hand-to-hand combat only. It's the only time you see grenades. Grenades are on a separate item. That is just not going to happen. That's the way it is, set in stone, end dot statement. However, in the Korean War, the PVA, the Chinese, had grenadiers. These poor bastards had 2 bags of grenades, and that's all they had for weapons, and they would run up in front of the Chinese horde and throw grenades at the UN forces. That's all they had was grenades. And behind them was a bunch of SMG dudes. So they would get the guys to duck down in the trench, and then come up and they'd sweep the trenches. So we had to have grenades as a weapon. So we had this logjam of, we need to have grenades. No, you don't. Yes, we do. No, we don't. How can we do it? No. So we had this back and forth between Alessio and us that, we were asking them to kill their baby and they're asking us to kill our baby. So after a while, we found a compromise. One day I said, how about this? I will make the grenades pistols. They act just like a pistol. They'd be a pistol. They're just like a pistol, but they're grenades. So we'll have guys with just grenades, and they're in the PVA conscript box and the infantry box. There's some guys with just grenades. So you buy a box, get 5 of them, and bang, now you got the grenadiers. And they act like they're having the pistols, but they're actually chucking grenades at you. And Alessio goes, yeah, that'll work. So we didn't break the system, but we bent the system, and we kept it still inside, like you were saying, Rex, that area that it doesn't change the rule, but it flexes it a little.
Sure. And anything that changes the dynamic of how the game plays,
exactly,
keeps things fresh and new. And all of a sudden, my tactics that I had before don't work as well anymore against this new weird army with this weird rule and whatever. And I think that's one of the things that that has perhaps has helped with bolt action continuing its longevity, is that every time we get a new book. Sure, we're still on version 2 rules, which are getting a little old now. But every time we get a book, we get new sort of dynamic things to keep it all interesting, and I love that about the system.
Sorry, John, did you just say we'll come back to that?
I said no comment. I have no comments on 3rd edition whatsoever. Nice try, Rex.
All right.
Yeah, I was going to see how you responded and see if I could push that point a little bit, but okay.
I can say what they said at the open day. There's something coming, but because of what you just said about how well those rules are put together and how well they're done, we have to be really, really careful about what we do. We don't want to it's been 8 years since we did version 2. 8 years since version 2. And
that's a long time for a game. I guess that speaks to its to how well it hangs together.
And we changed one book. We changed the Armies of Germany book, and then there's a 45-page errata and fact that come out about 2-3 times a year, but it covers all 40 plus books of bolt action. In fact, this last time, for the first time, they had bolt action Korea errata in there finally. So it was there was some nice in there. And then every year in June, I send something in too. So we have extra expanded rules and different things. And how about this for a scenario? So I cannot confirm nor deny that there is a 3rd edition coming, but there is a time coming that may be an item. And if it is, we will. I can guarantee you that we're going to be very careful. If we wanted to change it, we want to be able to change it so that we can get all that errata in there and get some maybe, streamline some things. But we don't want to do too much that we would have to change all the campaign books. Because, there's 40 plus campaign books. That'd be horrible.
Yeah.
If we had to change the army books, that's
I
8.
own them all, so I don't think I can afford that.
Yeah, exactly, right? We're not like some other company that has the same initiatives that we do, but different. Changing every 2-3 years, right? I mean, the codex creep is crazy. But if we did change, well, I'm really stepping around this question. If we did write a 3rd edition, we would try to make sure that we would not do it so much that we would change the campaign books, but we would probably change the army books. And what I mean by that is all those new infantry lists that we have, all those new infantry units that are out there. It'd be kind of nice to have them all in the British book, like all the New Zealand, all the Aussie, all the British, all the, in one book instead of having to go look for that campaign book. So
that is a bit tricky for for, especially I think for TOs. I submitted my Soviet list and I said, well, I'm going to have these guys from the Ostfront list and I want these from this list, and it does start, and then you got to FAQ them all. But I think it works really well. But as we were saying before, I think some of the things that everybody's got their list. We could send you a list of things that we want changed. Mainly, it's for Dan. It's British Airborne Tougher.
Of course.
So they probably reflect the angry British Airborne
everything
in front of the
come on, it's a British company. Everything's British is harder in that game. So it is.
But things like
actually, before we go any further, I'd like to say that actually stubborn, I think, is one of the greatest rules in the game. I think it's fantastic.
Yep.
And I think it absolutely works for guys who are going to die in a ditch, like airborne soldiers from various armies.
Just simple tweaks like making half tracks a little bit more useful in the game, or MGs in the game. You've heard it a million times from different people.
Snipers taking out team weapons.
What that does is it changes people. You've got the guy that's played the same list and has refined it over the last 3 or 4 years, and he plays the same game essentially every time. And, we're all having fun still, but, wouldn't it be great to get that guy to go out and buy a few Hanamags, and because they work slightly differently and all that. So, we love the game. We don't necessarily want any change, but we love new stuff as well. So we're happy no matter what you do.
I think you brought up a really good point too about TOs and lists. I've heard 2 different convincing arguments now about the generic list. And when you do a tournament, like a narrative and stuff, you want to run the scenarios and you want to make it really fun. And every game of bolt action is a cinematic effect. It's like you're in a movie and you're having a ball. But when you want to start doing a tournament to score and like maybe move up a chain in a circuit, you got to have some kind of leveling or standardization. So the generic platoon list has become the go-to for a lot of people. Now, having said that, what units that are allowed in that generic list is an incredibly crazy and convoluted question and answer. And I've heard people say that you can only use the generic ones in the army book. That's it. But then I've also heard a very, very convincing argument that says you can use any unit from any book in your generic list. You can't use the army lists from a campaign book, which really kind of strikes to me, because it says one lieutenant and 2 infantry. Well, it could be a Gurkha, it could be a British Airborne, but then you have to use the generic list instead of the list from the campaign book, because in the campaign book, of course we'll never let a naval observer in, but naval observer or some of those army lists, the Warsaw, some of those Warsaw Uprising army lists are a tough nut. But they're also designed for a 3-month period in battle, and they good in that campaign. Or an army list that has 4 or 5 tanks. It's for that instant in the campampaign. In a tournament setting, go ahead.
And it's being it's pitted against equal but opposite.
Yes, exactly.
During that 3 months, whereas you've got guys rolling up with a early war French list, and then that's a whole other thing.
Yeah.
Is this an argument then for potentially in the future, potentially if we were going to review the third edition, to maybe having windows periods during the war, of which maybe a tournament was set for periods. Or
great question, Dan, and that's kind of one of the reasons why we had been trying to tackle this idea of a tournament circuit and what to do for tournaments for a long time. Me and Paul Walker came up with something for the States, and we divided the States and Canada into these different regions, and we were going to have these step programs, and we put out a volume of standardized scenarios, standardized a player's handbook, a TO's book, and then a book about, for lack of a better title, how to kick assholes out of your game. A yellow card for slow play, red card for cheating. And it was a lot. And some people in America thought, oh, that's great, thanks, level field. Some people in Europe was like, holy shit, Warlord Games is now telling us what we can and cannot do, which was never our intention, which words mean things, right? So what we have is Marcus Vine now and Paul Sawyer sat down, and we came up with this idea of the tier system for our tournaments now. And now we have taken all those pages and we kind of just said, well, this is good, but let's start over. And now what we do is we have 4 tiers, and it's all on the TO shoulders. So if the TO wants to do a Blood Red Skies influenced bolt action game, or if he wants to do a narrative, or do competitive, or if he wants to allow lists or not lists, or this is the thing we're going to do, we don't care. It's all on the TO. And the TO will send in, hey, we're going to do a bolt action event in New Zealand in February. We're going to have 24, and we have 7 questions that you answer. Who it is, where it is, what time does it start, what time does it end, who's in charge, is there a contact, is there a web page, how many people are playing. And we have 4 tiers now, regardless of the world, and it's called the World War II tier system. So you can do Cruel Seas, you can do Bolt Action, you can do Blood Red Skies, you can do Bolt Victory at Sea. And tier 1 is 8 to 16 players, 8 to 16. And you get some certificates, and I don't know what the Aussie equivalent, the New Zealand equivalent is, but I know it's $120 US. Tier 2 is 18. We skip 17 because who wants to have an art player? 18 to 40 is tier 2, and that is $240 US of prize support that the TO picks. We don't do it. They pick it. So all these tournaments will have the same support, but now you can tailor make, like I did at Korean War event this past weekend. I had Korea give you out. So, first it's free. They call me the pusher.
Yeah, good.
Yeah, they call me the
war tournament or something, and tailor your prize pool for that.
Right. Fantastic. They call me the pusher for a reason. So, here you go. Tier 3 is a bigger one. It's 40 to 80. And tier 2 is when we bring in the silver dice, we bring in some more certificates, and we give you this year, it's a special figure. This year is the Koenig sniper, the German sniper from Enemy at the Gates. Yep. And then tier 3 is...
Which is beautiful, by the way. So if you happen to lose a box of those, or, there's a hole in the bottom of the box and 2 fall out, you know 2 people who want one.
Enemy at the Gates,
one
of my favorite. Look, he's showing it on the screen. Yeah. You audio listeners, you can't see it, but I could see it. I could nearly reach through the screen and grab it, but no.
I could taste it.
Yeah, that's right. There's
Dan can taste it.
Yeah, I don't know. But what we're doing is we're making these models exclusively to the event, so you have to go. And also the thing is look, if we have 8 to 16 people, we get some certificates and a mention in the events page. We get 2 more players. We get Koenig and silver dice. So the TO says, hey, look, I think I have 16. So we say, are you sure? Could you maybe make it 18? Oh, yes, sir. I can do 18. Boom, now you're at tier 2. That gives you more price support, $240 instead of $120. Tier 3 is we get into the gold dice, the gold order dice. We get into more Koenig. We get into also, the bullet piercing the armor plate, affectionately known as, I don't know what the rating of our show is, but nipple.
I'll beat you out of your nipple's fine.
The nipple trophy,
yeah, the nipple trophy.
Yeah,
so
that's a great one too.
Yeah, and we have the minis. We give you those minis, so you get 3 of those, and they're painted gold, silver, bronze. You get some posters to hang up to advertise the event. One is a ship one is an airplane one is an army infantry one, so you can kind of tailor make them. and you get $480 US support. And then the big one, probably the national one that is, or the world is 80 plus, and that gives you $720 of American of support. You get 10, I think, at Koenig's. You get the big nipple plus the little nipples, plus you get a silver dice, gold dice, and the winner of that event gets to choose or be input into the process of making a special model for the army he won. So there'll be a model that you get to design or get influenced with of that thing. Awesome. Yeah, so now that's worldwide.
That's really exciting, isn't it?
Yeah, so and now it's universal.
That's really exciting. I mean, our big conference over here is CanCon.
Yes,
in Canberra.
Yes.
If I still can't do it with my Kiwi accent, I'm afraid. I've only been living here 30 years. It's not long enough.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, that's the big conference here. I'm not sure how many we get, but I know it's a lot. But I don't think it's gonna push into 80.
The largest I've only heard of one event getting above 80, and that was the Cambridge Too Far event a couple years ago, and they had 96, and I was able to had the fortunate ability to attend that, and that was a magical thing to behold. I mean, it's a one-day event, and you show up at like 8 o'clock in the morning, then there's 50 tables set up. They had 96 people. They were shooting for 100, but they got 96. And they had 50 tables. Each table had different terrain, and it was good terrain. It wasn't just some other kind of we've heard about that had the little gray tables all over it and the gray boxes because that was a tournament.
Yep.
No.
Yep.
I'm not throwing shit. Yeah, I am. But anyway, every table is different, and they had like Thor, the big old siege on rail. That was a table, and they had submarine pins. I think they had 2, but they were different. I mean, it was 50 different tables, and they started at the crack of 8, and they played 3 or 4 rounds. They had a big screen, and they had organized. And then at 7:30 or 8 o'clock that night, it was in the gym at a university in Cambridge Too Far. At 8 o'clock, I think that night, it was 8 o'clock or 8:30, there was a janitor sweeping. Everything was gone. It was like magical. There and gone.
Wow, that's a highly tuned machine, that one.
Oh, it was great to see. But that's the most I've ever heard is 96.
Wow. Well, that's really exciting. Hey, that's hugely exciting. I don't know how we got onto that. We were talking about Korea,
yeah,
and then we got onto that. I think what we're going to have to do, Korea, because
I'm
it's
happy to have fallen down that rabbit hole. By the way,
that's right.
Yeah.
I'm highly motivated. I'm actively excited. We need to. One day, Rex and I, we've talked about going probably to Australia, or maybe Rex coming to New Zealand, but having a tournament, our own tournament. So
we're there to support you, whatever you need.
And the terrain on that day will be something to see, Dan, won't it?
Yeah, it'd be fantastic. Yep. Well, and me and Steve aren't done with Korea. Steve is working on the Army list for the Marines. We have the UN Forces American in there, and the Marines are in there, but we're going to do a Marine list that's going to be specific for the Marines, and he's working and tweaking on that. Every time I read another book, every time I find something, there's another unit that pops in there. So for the last 3 years, we've on June. That's the day of the start of the war. And in fact, I found something out the other day, and it's on. I have a Korea shirt that my Tanya Fastich made it for me. It says John Russell, Bolt Action Korea, all in stencil, and then underneath it says 625. 625, and it's spelled out 625, and 625 is what the South Koreans refer to as the Korean War. The North Koreans, it's a great patriotic father, this big ass communist name thing, but the South Koreans call it 625. So the more research me and Steve do, the more things we find out that we missed. Funny fact, we were getting done with Korea. We published Korea. And then what do they put on the cover, Rex? There's a guy standing there with a night fighting unit. Well, crap. we didn't have any night fighting rules in there yet. We had them thought about we
Oh
were going to do them.
no.
Right, exactly. So
Okay.
the first update we had, we put a crap ton of night fighting rules in there, and flares and arc lights and all this kind of stuff to cover the picture on the cover. So that's in there. And then next year after that, we put in the flamethrower tank. The some people complained. The two major complaints we had from Korea that I've heard was, why does the Shermans brew up easy? Because by the time they were fixed, there wasn't a problem anymore.
Yep.
They didn't blow up. And I said, well, the reason why we put them in there is not so much that they caught fire easy, is that 3 months ago or 2 months ago, that tank was on a plinth in front of a National Guard unit. And they pulled it off the pole, they pulled it off the pile, and they sent it over. So it may or may not be working perfectly. So that's why we put it in there. And then another complaint was, all the scenarios weren't a 4x6 table. Because you're going to notice when you read that, Rex, is there's a 2 foot by 4 foot table. There's a 6x4 table. There's a 10 foot by 3 foot table.
Well, how come I like that. Oh, you won't get any complaints with me about that. That just changed the whole dynamic of the game. I love it. I love it already. I'm ready.
Well, and they the reason why it's a 10 foot by 3 foot game is that's I think scenario 9 or scenario 10 called Hold Back the Night. And Hold Back the Night is based on a book called Hold Back the Night that was written in 1956, and they made a movie of it with Chuck Connors, the rifleman. He's the head sergeant, and it's about the struggle of the couple of these squads trying to get from Chosun down to Hangun and get off in the boats.
Yep.
And they ran this gauntlet, and there was Chinese all along on the bank. So there's I think 18 or 20 Chinese units on the north and south part of the map, and there's 4 or 5 American units. Now, the Chinese only get 5 order dice, but they have 18 units to choose from.
Right, okay.
And
love that.
Yeah, and as the game goes a little bit longer, you add more order dice. So it's not a stop and fight; it's get the hell out, And it's based on that movie and the book. So it's a 10 foot by 3 foot map. Now, what's really cool and warmed the cockles in my heart was there's a guy in Florida that took that scenario and turned it into 54 millimeter. And he's got 54 millimeter Chinese troops and 54 millimeter Marine Corps models painted up, and he runs this game. Oh, and he's done it 2 or 3 times. And when he does it, I call in, I say hi to everybody. We talk about the game. I told him enjoy it, and then he sends me pictures. He took it to, I think it was Huracan or Crucible down in Florida, and everybody loved it. I mean, come on, man, 54 millimeter is an eye catcher, but to do it off of our book was such an honor and just a humbling experience. We've also put 3 what-if scenarios in there, and you'll find them. Scenario 2 is Ivan needs your help. We know now.
That's ominous.
Yeah, we know now, but then in 1950, it was thought that maybe they weren't North Koreans and Chinese in those MiG-15s. Maybe they were Russians. Yep. We now know that, oh, hell yeah, they were. There was a crap ton of them. Well, Ivan Needs Your Help is about a crashed aircraft in the center of the board. And side note, inside joke, the picture that shows Ivan running away from you in the picture in the book that you have, Rix, is actually the White Rose of Stalingrad model when we first put out Blood Red Skies, the female. That's her. Yes. And that's her in there. It's not a guy. It's a female, but it looks really cool. But what happens is an airplane crashed, and the communist forces are trying to get there because it's a Russian pilot, and they're trying to get him out or they'll kill him. And if the Americans get there, or the UN forces get there, hey, coup, it is a Russian, The second what-if scenario is called Valkyrie, and it's about a evacuation of a MASH unit. So the UN forces have to hold the line long enough for the helicopters. Yes, Korea has helicopters, 3 different types.
I know.
But not in what you think it is in Vietnam. And we'll talk about amphibious assaults in just a second. That's what they called them, was amphibious Okay,
all right,
assaults.
yes.
Yeah, and your job is to hold the line long enough for the helicopters to land and get all the patients out. The third and final what if scenario is, I think it's scenario 7, is nuke them till they glow. And
Yep.
what this scenario is, at the transition from the Truman administration to the Eisenhower administration, there was a great worry and concern of the Red Menace, and it's spreading, and the communists going all around the world. And yeah, we all know that MacArthur wanted to use tac nukes along the Yalu and finish it, but that was too harsh. However, at the time, the United States inventory of nuclear devices was 48. We had 48 total devices. That's all we had, 48, which is probably 47 too many, but we had 48. They moved 24 of those to Guam to be in the area in case they needed to use it. And Chipyong-ni, which there's 2 scenarios written by Leo Baron, is the Gettysburg of Korea. And if the Chinese forces would have broken through and got to Seoul, which would have been the 6th time that capital changed hands, they're going to start dropping tac nukes. So we had to talk about that. And it's something that we kind of knew about, but then we started doing research and we found it, so we wanted to educate as long as to have fun with what happened if. So the rules state you have to get the most ominously sized big dice or darkest dice that you have in your dice inventory, and you put it on the table and you put it to the pip number 1. And as you play the game, every Chinese force after the first that gets off the board, you advance that pip. And if you get to 6 before time runs out, game over, everybody loses, and boys and girls, get your parkas out because it's going to be a long winter because the nukes are coming. So we had to put that.
That's doomsday clock. I love that. I love that. That's really creative. Wow, I'm really excited. I'm really excited to have a look. This wasn't going to be the career edition. I was going to say, why don't we read it and then we'll come back and do a career thing. But I don't know. I think I'm going to go onto the website and start ordering some minis on that.
Yeah, and we'll talk about the 3 different types of helicopters and the amphibious assault next time. Then.
All right. Okay. Sounds good. So the next question that Dan had for you, man, that sounds good. I'm so excited. The next question that Dan had for you, because I'm taking 2 and then he's got a couple more, was you've written that one. What are you writing next? Or are you writing next?
Well, we were thinking
a secret project?
Yeah, we had something we were kind of thinking about. Now it might come back. It's been shelved and off the shelf and back on the shelf and on the shelf. It's an expansion of Firefight. And Firefight is a set of rules, or the Street Fighting Academy that we released in the Stalingrad book, and we also had one called the Lebanese Taxi Service. I don't know if that ever hit the streets, but we have one called the Lebanese Taxi Service for Africa, and it's a squad on squad where everybody gets an order dice. So,
yes. So Dan and I have looked at this. We have gone, oh my gosh, we can't wait for this to start to grow.
We heard the rumors. Yeah, we heard the rumors. I think Snafu might have had stuff in there. I think another. I believe the book was going to be called something like Raiders Supplement or something like that.
Raiders Attack. Correct? Raiders Attack. Yep.
Yep. So tell us more. Is it?
Well, it's
active.
It's an on-again and off-again project. I mean, Graham Davey came out with 0200 Hours, which is a phenomenal game for that kind of late night kind of attack stuff, based on the Test of Honor game engine, it's a great one, and it's sitting right there. We didn't know quite how far down the rabbit hole do we want to go. Firefight was like 2 pages originally.
Yeah.
The whole concept and idea inside. It was a 2-page piece of paper from Alessio Cavatore, and it was called Playing with Single Men. Now, obviously, that title wouldn't work very well in public, so we're going to try to change it to Raiders Attack or something. So we started working on it, and my good friend Rick Carlisle started working on it, and Tom McCready, and we started trying to figure out what it was, and we had like 70, 80 pages written, and then it was shelved. And now they're talking about maybe bringing the dust off. Because, I mean, it would be so cool, 85% of everybody who works at Warlord used to work at Games Workshop. And Games Workshop's been around for 35 plus years, and they kind of got some ideas at work. And with what we have in our Warlord inventory, we could do that massive BFG 40K, Epic 40K, Inquisitor kind of game, and it would be Blood Red Skies. And we've done this before I've done it with Stalingrad and I've done it with Guadalcanal. You have, if the Betty bombers get through the fighter wave, there's a bolt action game going continuously on, Japanese versus Marines. And if the Betty gets through, there's an airstrike on the Americans. And then you have a Cruel Seas game going on, or Victory Sea, your choice. Cruel Seas game, here comes the assault barges down the slot, and the PT boats have to stop them. If they don't stop them, the Japanese army gets 2 squads of reinforcements. And then the other one, which is what we're talking about, Raiders Attack, is there's a Japanese village in the center of the board, and there's 12 guys there, and there's 12 Marine scouts, Marine Raiders. And if they get through this village or neutralize all the Japanese, on the big bolt action board, they get 2 Marine squads to flank anywhere they want. So this is how we can incorporate this Raiders Attack idea, would be force on force. Every guy gets a dice in the bag. So now we have to figure out, do we want to make it quick and simple, or do we want to give them skills like bomb expert, like what they do in 0200, Radio Man, stuff like that. So and is there agility? And so it became, I think Tom McCready went on and did a book, a solo game called Halo. It was on a Kickstarter. It was kind of like this idea of making these super groups, and you had to do these scenarios. And he went down. It's a great system, but it's how do you write it so that it is quick and fast and doesn't break the Warlord Games mantra of have fun and play it and quick and fast, and how much detail do you want to put in there? So there's a fine line we're trying to weave. And now that the dust has been blown off, we might start working on that again. So that's the project that I would get into, involve, and write again. So there.
Yeah, it sounds good. I mean, we're really excited about that, and we talked a little bit about hand grenades and that type of thing. There's weapons that you don't get to use in bolt action because it would break the game. It would slow it down to the point where it would just be a crawl and it wouldn't be fun. But if you've only got 5 guys, you can throw a grenade, and then you've got a circle of effect for that weapon, and did it hit, did it not hit, and you're sort of bringing the artillery type rules down to the individual man thing. But yes, I see what you say about trying to work out how detailed to go. There's those of us that have played role-playing games that love to do resource management and ammo and comms and light source and whatever else. There's others of us that don't so much.
Well, and it puts that role-playing element in the game. And Brett Cantor and Steve Toth over at the Lead Pursuit podcast took Andy Chambers put out this campaign system for Blood Red Skies, and they took that and they took Squadron Commander, I think, from Two Fat Lardies, and they've pushed together the system that they're working with Andy Chambers. They're going to put it out pretty soon about just what you said, Rex. The guy gets the plane and he does his mission. Then you have all the action. Does he fall in love with the local bombshell? Does he get sent off the thing? And there's this whole after action you roll. Did he bail out? Well, how did he bail out? Did he escape? And it's a book. It's about, I'm showing you a 1/4 inch thick of charts and stuff. And does he get a new upgrade? It's all about the before action and after action battle of Blood Red Skies. And you may see that here soon. It's getting really close to publish. And again, this Raiders Attack would be the same kind of thing. It might have a lot of bookkeeping. It might not. It's kind of like Tank War that we do, that you have your commanders, and they get, as you do more games, you can buy certain skills. Tank War is a great game like that as well.
Well,
great.
Dan, you should send them a couple some unsolicited suggestions for that, because Dan and we had a fantastic chat just after Dan finished up with Officer Training School. Well, there's one session of Officer Training School, and some of the stuff. I mean, most of it he couldn't tell me about because it's the military. It's
Right.
but he did tell me one thing, and my gosh, it was interesting. You think you know it all because you watched Saving Private Ryan a couple of times. Well, there's a lot more, and as you know, there's a lot more to the military than that. And bringing out some of those things that we don't know about in terms of tactics and things. It really.
Going down those levels allows you to add the nuances to it and really opens up how you use your weapons, in a really tactical way. So very exciting. Oh, sounds good. I've got a question for you, John.
Yes.
So, the question is, if there was something that you wanted people to know about Warlord Games that, because we, from the outside, right, we sit here and, people always study and pick apart what they can look at from the outside. Is there anything that you guys in Warlord Games would like people to know about you that you sometimes you feel that we don't know about, or that we get frustrated about, that maybe you wish we knew more about?
Warlord Games is situated in Nottingham, England. We moved during COVID to a new facility we're all pretty much under one roof. Everything is in one place, except for the making of the plastic sprues is in one location. And we are in 82 different countries around the world.
Wow.
And our company has about 85 employees. We only have 85 employees. And we have a fulfill rate now because of Keith and Bernard and the customer service guys and all the guys in the warehouse and gals in the warehouse, females, everybody that's in our warehouse. We now have a fulfill rate from when we get your order, 24 or 48 hours. I have to go dig in the notes. 24 or 48 hours from when we get your order, we have a 99% fill rate. We have fixed our processes. We have fixed our manufacturing. We have fixed our storage and our warehouse facilities. That we have about a 99% fill rate now.
Wow, that's huge. That's a really telling stat that you're servicing almost as many countries as you have employees. Like,
yeah, exactly.
Let's say an even amount, because it's three ways. So let's not let's not beat around the bush. And that really puts the 5 consecutive years you've been best customer service, voted in War Games Illustrated. So Lorenzo, wherever he is at your house, I hope he's enjoying a cold beer, because you and him and the rest of the team there at Warlord Games, that's massive.
And we're still whimsical. Okay, here's a question for you two. I have a question for you two.
Okay,
what is the production code number for our barnyard animal set? And you can't look it up. What is the product code for our barnyard animals set? And you know it.
Is it?
I think it's something like moo, like MOO, or bar, isn't it? It's
bar,
one of the animal noises.
Something, I think.
You're close. My first time I went over for Open Day, and I worked at Open Day, John Stollard, the CEO of the company, come running up to me, giddy as a schoolgirl on prom night, and said, "Guess what it is? Guess what it is? Guess what it is?" I said, "I don't know." He said, "You know." And I said, "I don't know." And he popped the box to me, and on the side where it says production code, it says EI.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, because we've both got that set, of course.
So we're whimsical. We have fun, and we don't take ourselves too seriously, but we have fun when we do it.
That's great.
That's really great. That's over a massive product range as well.
We have about 17. Yeah, we have about 17,000 SKUs. I think.
Not only is it bolt action and blood red skies and combined arms and whatever other stuff that we own. There's a whole bunch of stuff that we're yet to buy. I didn't say
2000 AD, baby. Slain, yeah.
Rogue Trooper for me, John.
Okay, now, good question, Dan. Here's what we're kind of kicking around the office right now. Next up is the next Easterish time we might have a thing about something in Dread about blocks and wars and something. Not that I can tell you that it is, but isn't, but maybe. We also released at our Open Day, we show pictures of ABC Warriors. Okay, so we're going to do ABC Warriors probably next. Rogue Trooper is one that we're going to do, but there's 2 ideas. Okay, should we do it just like that beautiful game system that Gav Thorpe and Andy Chambers and Roger Garish and Judge Dredd came up with, that is a smooth, quick, simple skirmish level thing? Quick and fast, 28 mil, have some fun. Or do we do Rogue Trooper like Epic, and we have a Nord army and a Sud army, and we have those massive battles like Epic was, 40K, and we have a stand of Rogue Trooper running through that. So he's a unit on the board running through the big, vast canvas that was the New Earth War. Which way do we go? So
interesting. So I can see the big battle. I could see the drop site massacre. I can see the the traitor general sending them down.
Yeah.
I almost could see a third direction. I could almost see a small squad of the Southers trying to break out of that massacre.
Yeah.
That includes Rogue Trooper and Helm and Gunner and Bagman before they get killed. And I could almost see it as a dress rehearsal for perhaps Raiders attack.
Yeah. See, there's a lot of different ways we're going to go. We really enjoy our relationship with Rebellion 2000 AD. We have a great time with it. And John grew up with Airfix, and everybody in the UK grew up with Rebellion and Battle comics, So they are now chased and got and work with their idols and dreams and gods. They're heroes. So one of our big coups was working with Airfix, and doing Airfix Presents Big Red Skies. Now we're really happy to do Rebellion. We were very happy to do Doctor Who, but we learned that when we did that and got it and finished and put out the rules, that BBC is a separate and completely different identity than BBC America. So although we had the rights and the privileges of BBC,
right? Okay,
we didn't with BBC America. So that's why we had a long time we couldn't release Doctor Who in America. We could release it everywhere else in the world, but not America because it's not BBC America. So there was some things and hurdles we had to get through, and it runs its course. So we had Terminator, and then we worked with Alessio and River Horse Games, and we did that, and then our licensing ran out, and then Who's soon to run out, and then so we have 17 different systems or games types in our inventory right now, which, much like Korea, that's a lot of logistics. So in order to be lean, light, and lethal, we have to not work so hard on or put on the shelf for a while or move around to still keep going, which is one of the reasons why we took Cruel Seas and Gates of Antares and put it into our Skytrex division. People said, "Oh, you got rid of it." No, we own Skytrex. We bought Skytrex. Skytrex is us. But by putting all the Gates of Antares and all of the Cruel Sea stuffs at that location, freed up massive space in our warehouse to put other stuff in there to get that 99% fill rate. So Cruel Seas, the game designed by and finished and came from the brain of John Stollard, why would we get rid of it, is over there now. We call it putting it to bed because we didn't have anything in the pipeline for 6 months. So why should we have that Cruel Seas fanatic out there waiting every month to hear something and getting disappointed when he finds out there's nothing coming out that month?
Yeah.
It's not dead. It's still around. You can still order it. Go to the website. It's there. Trust me. So it's not dead. It's not there. It just has to be moved somewhere, and we need to put our focus and our forces behind something else for a while. Some people complain that there's nothing coming out for Gates of Antares for a long time. Well, Gates of Antares for Warlord was a completely different animal. We had no fantasy. We're a historical. We're probably the GW of historicals. We're the historical game company out there. We're the biggest one.
Yep.
And we do something sci-fi. Holy crap! What the hell? I think Gates of Antares is more like Star Trek than Star Wars. It's really technical. It's not so much whimsical. And I'm not saying that in any kind of harm for Star Wars people. It's just Star Wars got magic in it, and Gates of Antares doesn't. So we had to do something different. And when we released Gates of Antares, we had to release so much stuff to get it out there and get the armies, because we had nothing. There was no American army. There was no German army that you could start with. You had to have 2 brand new armies. Not like Korea with just one communist army. No, you had to have two, and maybe we ended up having 9 different armies in Gates of Antares. So we had to do everything within the first year or two of release. So there was a crap ton of Gates of Antares releases. Okay, we've ran through it now. So we're pretty much done for the moment. And we had version 2 ready to go, and then that COVID bugger came out, and we had to shelve that for a while. And now that it's done, we decided to put it over in Skytrex, and we released in PDF free the Gates of Antares 2 rules. And that just kicked off a storm of creativity that has just amazed me. We now have the Warlord, which we were talking about at the headquarters. Now some guy designed it. It's on their website, and that's the end. They're beautiful models. And that, the Intel site and the Facebook page is just running hot because the fans have control of that game now. And the fans, and Rick is watching over it with Tim Grancroft. Tim's doing a phenomenal job of leading that and being the head sheep herder for that game, along with Rick Priestley. And now that's in the hands of the fans, and look what happened.
Yeah, that's an interesting point, actually. I think Warlord just does a fantastic job of working with other companies. You talked about,
for sure.
Like with the big Blood Red Skies, working with completely different miniature manufacturer, and with the fans, and I guess to some degree what we've done with our book, although we did it kind of independently, and it's not a bold action book as such, but of course our love is bold action at the moment, and that's what we play it with. But yeah, I think that's one thing that you really do well, is once you get that momentum there and you start getting fan created content or fan contributed content. I mean, look at how many campaign books have come from Australia.
Yeah.
Like the original Australian book was just a PDF. From the Bold Action Alliance guys, I believe.
Yeah.
And then it became an actual proper book.
And
once you start to get that thing, and you've got a reputation of having a really great system that people can work with, and inspires them to go on and be creative, then you start to take on a mind of its own, which is great to see.
Well, that's what Krill sees it. One day John Stoddard read a book about those ship fights. I call them knife fights in a dark closet. And it became something he became passionate with, and started working on rules. And he designed it. Everybody in the headquarters was like, John, I think you're crazy. Oh, I think we got something. And then he was an advocate. He pushed it through. None of the channels were changed because he was the boss. He ran through all the wickets like everything else. And when it come time to produce it, he said, maybe we should have, the company said, maybe we should do 1,000 copies. He said, John says, I think we'll do 3. We did, tons of it. It was fantastic. And that rule and that game sparked an interest in Gabriel, and Black Seas came out of that idea. So then he did Black Seas. And then when COVID hit, one of the good things I guess you could say about COVID is Gabriel sat down with Ronnie from Mantic, and all of a sudden what comes out of that? Armada. So now that rule set, the game Armada uses everything from Black Seas, which all came from Cruel Seas. So some would say it's incestuous. Some would say it's not narcissistic. It's kept in the family. And when you're in the lead belt of Nottingham, where Foundry, Games Workshop, Footsore, North Star, Lucid Eye, Wargames Illustrated, DZ, Warlord games you can walk from Warlord to Bugman's in 20 minutes and eat lunch there and get back. I mean, it's all within that mile or two. I don't know what's in the water or whatever. Now, if I missed a company, I apologize. But wow, right? So you've got that nepotism, I guess, but in a good way. And that's how those things. You read a book and something sparks you. Or you find a passion, you're passionate about Primasol, and you start writing about it. You start getting the people to play it. You get passionate about Korea. You get passionate about D-Day. It's just, you talk to Darren, Darron. He's now the head keeper of the books, and we've got several books in the pipeline. And we just announced this past Friday, the 11th of November, Hail Caesar 2. So that's gotten a huge bump this weekend in our sales because people are just going nuts about Hail Caesar. And what we try to do is we try to cover as much as we can because we're the historical boys. Bolt action is World War II and up to 53 because of Korea. From 1900 to 1700 is black powder. From 1700 to 1500 is pike and shot. And then everything back was supposed to be Hail Caesar. Hail Caesar was, I think, our first book we wrote, then powder. I might have got them backwards. But Hail Caesar was out there, and it was supposed to go to 1500, but it really didn't. But now with this rewrite, it'll do the War of the Roses, bring in the arquebuses and some of those early initial pike and shot things. Yep. So then it will truly cover, and it'll be streamlined. And I guess they gave Rick another curry, so there he's going to write another book for us. So that's the whole story, how we got Hail Caesar, a curry and a pound. So now the Hail Caesar book will truly cover that period. So now we have everything from Doctor Who back to Egypt. So that's, 17,000 SKUs is, yep. Roughly. So there you go.
Fantastic.
Well, we only have one SKU, which of course is our book.
Exactly.
And I know you've been talking to people about it this weekend at Millennium Con. So how did it go down there?
Wowzer. You sent me 14 books. I have 3. So now,
was that from one weekend?
Yeah, 1 weekend. Now, having stated that, though, however, I had gotten my 2 books back in July, just in time to bring them to my convention, Twisted Lords, here in Oklahoma City. It's a Warlord Games convention. It's will be next year will be our 9th year, and it keeps getting better and better. And I brought out those 2 books, and I had to keep an eye on them because my raiders were going to steal them from me. And so and then when I went over in September, I left the 2 books that I had at the headquarters for them to see, and they were like, "Oh yeah, we heard about this. Oh my God, this is beautiful." I said, "I know. That's why I brought it." So you guys thankfully replaced those 2. I appreciate that. And then you sent me 12 more. I bought them from you, and 7 of my raiders already scrubbed them up. So I had 5 left out of that 12 to bring with me to the show, and I sold 2 right away. So I've got 3 left to take to Snafu. So I anticipate another order here real soon down the pike because I always, when I go to a show, when I go to a convention, when I go to a tournament, I have a phrase that I say is more pots of honey bring more pots of money. I am the Warlord guy in North America. I am the Warlord store that travels, but I like to have good items on my table. I like to have books like Prima Sol because people can say, "Oh my God, what's that?" I'll say, "Yeah, look, and they can do this, and here's the armies." It's a lead in. Again, I'm called the pusher for a reason. And I'll tell you how I got that story sometime, but got that title. But it is a beautifully well thought out, well laid out book. And when I tell people it's the first effort, they're like, "Holy crap, I can't wait to see what's next." What do you know? I know what they're working on next, but I can't tell you, and we won't tell it here. But the way it's laid out, the graphic artists that you are was phenomenal. The eye-catching color, the detailed work, the typeset is a pleasure to read. It's not. There's certain typesets that really wear out your eyes, and you picked the perfect typeset to do that. The script is fantastic, and the inner blending of miniatures and real pictures, and the stuff you got from the British Airborne Library, Dan, phenomenal. You almost see the coffee rings, and the maps for the scenarios blew everyone's mind. Those are groundbreaking. They're phenomenal. The way they're a pleasure just to look at. Hell, frame them and put them on the wall.
Yeah.
They're just nice. And then, the hits just keep on coming. You scroll through and you go to the back and you show that list of units and the list of scenarios and when you need them and how you need them and how deep. That little flow chart kind of looking start blows people's minds. Like, oh my God, I love this. We were just talking, and then you go into the new units that you guys come up with. Phenomenal. And then we get to some say the favorite section, the hobby section, and how you built that bridge and how you built Johnny 1. And the step-by-step pictures to show. Back in when I started that Luftwaffe box, you bought a game off the shelf because the cover was cool and it looked kind of neat on the back. It was written. Nowadays, people won't buy a game until they've seen the unboxing, watched the how to play video, somebody's run them through a demo, and they've touched it, tasted it, licked it, and felt it, and then they'll buy
Yeah.
it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so now you have to have all of those five senses covered when you put something out for hopefully somebody will buy it. And you guys nailed every sense of the human body in that book. It's visually appealing. You crack it open, it's got that brand new book smell. The paper you guys use, oh heaven, and then the tasty frame and rhetoric and the books and the pictures that you all put in there. It's a plethora of sensory overload.
That's
Oh,
good.
John, you're good to us. I tell you what, I've got a good partner, because a lot of what you're loving is Rex's hard work. So,
Oh my God,
I'm very fortunate.
Yeah, I think
beautiful.
we took a leaf out of a lot of people's books to when we thought about putting that through, and I think you're right. It's layers and levels, and back to the old days of GW books that had a bit of a hobby section in the back, and when you can't play, you can only read the army lists so often, but you can look at the hobby thing. You might be able to do a bit of hobby or whatever else.
Yep.
So, and again, it's like your book. I read it once for the historical content, once for the army list, once for the scenarios, and then you get to play it as well. It's like a bonus. So
It's great. It's just everything you hit all the ticks, and it is just beautiful, and it's exciting, and it's just a pleasure to have in the library, and I think everybody should have something like that, and it should become a benchmark for people who are trying to. If you really want to wow Warlord, you have now set the benchmark for how to support or put into or petition Darren to choose your book, because if you have that as the initial layout and backbone, you probably get in. Have the next subject.
I tell you what, though, we learnt the value of partnering with Osprey Games, because to do all that and then do the layout and everything else as well. Oh my goodness, it was a bit more than what we expected.
Question number 2 for you in the crowd. This is an easy one, though. What is the number one seller for Osprey? Hands down, number one seller for Osprey.
Oh,
is it the bolt
I'd
action?
say surely it's
rule?
bolt action.
There it is. Bolt action. Yep, bolt action. The bolt action paraphernalia. Because
See, this is what I'm talking about with the synergy in the industry. That's fantastic, isn't it?
Yep. It's they do us proud, and we do them well.
Yeah,
Great stuff.
and yeah, it's a great partnership. And thank you so much for getting so enthusiastic about our book. We're really flattered, and it's great to hear that. It's great to get affirmed what people like about it, because the next product, then we can take the learnings forward and make sure we replicate and build on those things for the next book.
Do everything and more. Do everything you did and more.
That sounds good.
That's right. Keep on keeping on, because you've found the vein of gold in the historical periods, and you've really mined that depth and got the good chunks out.
Oh, thanks, John.
Thanks, John.
Well, we know it's getting late, and you've travelled all the way back from the con today, and you're talking to us this evening.
Holy crap! We're coming up on 2 hours, aren't we? Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah. So yeah,
See, give me a couple of beers, and you get all kinds of secrets from me. See, that's a trick.
I know. Well, that's what we're coming on to. You see, I was like, is there any tidbits you'd like to drop on us, maybe in regards to bolt action? I guess
Sure.
A lot of our listeners.
Yeah.
What do you got coming up?
Tough Gut will be out probably Easterish, first, second quarter, and that's Soft Underbelly goes up to Anzio, and then Tough Gut will go from Anzio and on. So there's going to be a bunch more Italians. This weekend we were fortunate. We had the Arditi, we had the Colonial troops, we had the San Marcos Marines, and then we had the Italian support, and then they're in the new box. We're streamlining our boxes now too. It's in the same size of boxes that our aces are from Blood Red Skies, those small little boxes. It was 10 guys in that box. Phenomenal, right? Less breakage, less bumping. And we even had boxes that come out at the end of the month of the Italian Bersaglieri are also in a separate box. Yeah, we have the boxed army for the black shirts and the Bersaglieri. And then we also had the single individual boxes. So there'll be more Italian stuff. There'll be more Americans, the stuff for the NZO and the British,
Yep.
and then some more German troops. That'll be coming out. Then I'm trying to think. I think we have we have another epic range coming out that John alluded to a little bit. After we've got that new sprue in December. That's instead of a brigade in the box for ACW American Civil War, we're going to have it's going to have a regiment of dismounted, a regiment of cavalry, a regiment of skirmishers, and a regiment of Zouaves. So you can expand those. We've
Fantastic.
got more stuff coming for Dread. We got some more stuff coming for Hail Caesar 2. We've got what else? There's something. Of course, more. You'll notice some of our Blood Red Skies aircraft are gone because they were metal and they're getting redone in resin. Our Siocast machine, and thank you to Pete Gosling. We got him from Games Workshop, and I've worked with him a long time ago, and I love Pete. He's fixed and streamlined how we get our Siocast machines. We now have 3 on site. We have 8 metal spinners and 3 Siocast machines, and we're converting all of our aircraft now over to that that Warlord resin. And some of you will notice out there that some of our boxes are coming out more and more in that reinforcement box, the green box. And the reason why is, for example, the Luftwaffe Blood Red Skies expansion deck. We had gotten or purchased so many of the box, and then we ran out. So we haven't got a chance to refill that yet, but we have some stock of card. So we wanted to put out the cards anyway, so we put them in those reinforcement boxes. The Pulsar had an idea that we wanted to get them out in something, so we do that. Some people complain that when they get their resin, it's in the bubble wrap and not in the box. Well, that's because that's how we sell it. That's what it comes, is that way. Because we don't do a lot of... I know you guys, and I'm talking to the choir, I know you know this, but if you're going to produce a ton of figures, you want it in plastic because it's cheaper that way. The initial cost to make them is high, but then because the way the process is, they're pennies on the dollar because you're going to have a lot of them. You're going to have a ton of Italians, but you're not going to have a lot of Semavantes, or Serianas. So then you make those in resin because you have a smaller thing. And then if you're going to do not as many plastic, but more than resin, that's where the metal comes in. But the industry is slowly but surely moving away from metals and more plastics or resins or Siocast, that Warlord resin. So is lead dead? No, it's going to be around for a long time because that's how it fits that niche. So you're going to see a lot of our miniatures that were in one type be changed over or reboxed, like all the parachutista, the parachute troops for Italy. We've pulled off the line, redid them, cleaned them, and put them in a new box. So you'll see some of that, see a lot of that.
That's good. And the Warlord resin's been really successful. We spoke about Games Workshop and their sort of
Crapcast.
Finecast did not work at all.
Crapcast.
However, the transition to Warlord resin has been really good.
Yeah.
And I think it's testament to the people that you have,
Rachel.
the employees you have.
Rachel's a phenomenal in resin stuff, and then Pete picked
and the
it up.
quality control you guys have got in there, like when you get it, it's really, really top notch.
And we're starting. Every time I go over there, besides trying to convince them to do Raiders Attack again, I keep on talking to them about. We have, when you mess up a metal run, you throw it in a thing and it melts. You restart it. Plastic you can grind down and reuse and melt it. Siocast Warlord resin, you can do that too. You can reuse that. But the resin stuff that, like our tanks, can't be reused. So if it comes out bad, we end up, trying to shred it and put it in a landfill. Well, I've convinced them that when I come over, there's always a box of meat I can dig through, and it's the miscasts. And what I do is I bring back, I get them to send me back a box or 2 of that, and I give it to my Raiders, and they make terrain out of it. So
absolutely,
we might in the near future you might see from Warlord, like what Victoria did a while ago. Here's a bag of crap, a pound a bag, or 5 pounds, 5 bag, 5 pound bag. and you don't know what's in there, but it'll be like World War II or Victory at Sea or Blood Red
Yep.
Skies, but there'll be busted shit stuff in there. Sorry, I'm trying to catch myself, Rex. Busted stuff in there, and you don't know what it is, but you can't
You know it's your
complain.
game system.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know it's your game system, and so it's going to be, suitable for your battlefields.
Yeah. So
yeah, we're hobbyists.
That's great.
We're big hobbyists as well as big wargamers. So
Yeah.
we're always nothing gets thrown away.
So
Even,
in those, go ahead.
Even when you ship books across to somebody
Yeah.
in the US and you include foam in there just to protect the books.
Yeah.
Yep. Hopefully that foam goes on to be terrain in a future life.
Well, because I dig through those boxes of terrain, busted resin, I sometimes found gems of things that are soon to be released. Or when we have our open day, we put certain figures in cases that people see and they're like, "Ooh, what is that?" This last open day, we had pictures of the duck in different formats, with or without the canvas, with the cannon, with the with the mortar, and then we had I'm sure somebody saw or eagle-eyed, or we'll go back and check the pictures now that I mentioned this. There was a shelf of unique and interesting large AFVs that never really met the battlefield, but were on a crap ton of drawing boards. And there's 6 allied and there's 6 Axis. So you might see, we might call them paper tigers, we might call it, drawing board, and there'll be its own separate system of those massive, the Mouse 2, the Tortoise, those tanks that were made but never designed, and they'll probably fit into something we haven't talked about. I know we're getting close to the end, but we still should talk about K-47. A little known fact, everybody thought we owned it. We thought we had control of it. No. Surprise, all we had was the distribution. So we had no control of what was coming. We had no control of what Clockwork Goblin was going to do. We had a relationship that we would take what they gave us and we'd publish it. And we'd have some kind of rule system. So now that we have bought and own the rights now to K-47 from Clockwork Goblin, there's going to be a rework. We might bring it up to speed. We might bring it up to Bolt Action 2. I like that it was blended of Bolt Action and Gates of Antares. It had that initiative system in there that was really cool, that you could rack to fire. But you're going to see a redo of K-47 here pretty soon. And I'm really excited about that, because K-47 is one of those games that everybody loves. And if you buy, for example, a U.S. Army box set, you kludge on a couple RARs and walkie-walkies and pew-pews, and now you're playing K-47. Or
that's a great double up, isn't it?
Well, it's actually triple up, because then you add a Patton or a M39 troop carrier, basically a Hellcat without the turret. Bang! Now you have a Korea, so you get a 3-shot for American box set, right? So there's going to be some really cool stuff coming down the pike for K-47.
Oh, that sounds good. That sounds excellent.
Excellent. Oh, you heard it here first, team.
Hope that got you scratching it's your scratch your hobby and it got your brain thinking.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Oh.
And all you people out there listening, if you've got something that's really been bugging you and keeping you up at night, and you know who you are and you know what I'm talking about, write it down and send it to us. You can send it to me, jon.russell at warlordgames.com. Text it to me at my phone at 406-579-7704, and I'll see what I can do and get it to Darren, or send it to Darren. The worst thing that can happen is we say no. But like that basketball player says, you miss all the shots you don't take. Why not try it and see what it is? And maybe we might like it. You might have something. Some guys, I think they're working on a Yugoslavia book for Bolt Action now, because that's an important part. Wouldn't it be great to have the Spanish Civil War? All the parts are there. And that's what made Korea so easy, because all the models were there. All the major models were there. We had to add a little bit, and boom, it was done. Who knows what's going on, and who knows what lurks in the minds of men out there? Send us in your ideas. There's a girl called Rosalind that put out some stuff on the Ready Room Facebook page about jets in Blood Red Skies. Everybody loved it. Everybody had some comments. I started talking with Rosalind. I put Rosalind in touch with Andy Chambers, and now they're talking about doing something. Maybe we'll do, a linebacker or two, and we'll put 2 Phantoms and 2 MiG-17s in a box and call it Blood Red Skies Vietnam. Who knows? But she put out something that she was passionate about, and now it's a major topic of discussion about how to do rockets and missiles or missiles into Blood Red Skies. You don't know the ripple of the rock that you have in your mind will cause in the pond of gaming until you throw it in. So I'm asking you to throw rocks at me. Throw me your ideas. Throw me what you think might or might not work. I will try to get back to you as fast as I can. I have a slightly busy schedule, but I'll try to get some kind of answer in a form or fashion in 24 hours. But get your idea out there, because we won't know about it if you keep it in your head. Get it out there. Now, if it's about like, let's put bears with wings and we can do rope. No. We're historical, okay? We're not fanatical or fancy. We're historical. So please send us your ideas for historical stuff.
Well, that sounds like a fantastic place to leave it, John.
Absolutely.
We really, really, really appreciate you coming on the podcast. We are
Anytime,
absolutely excited about everything you've said. I've got my career book here and I'm raring to go. And
thank you so much.
So follow-ups, the next 2 ones we'll have is one's going to be about Korea and one's going to be about Raiders and how we can get Raiders into New Zealand.
Raiders, yeah.
Sounds good.
We're absolutely keen for that. And Dan's going to bring to bear all his military training, and I'll still have no chance to beat him on the table.
There you go.